Welcome to the Business Shop Podcast, where our guests speak on meeting the challenges of entrepreneurship, as well as offer tips and advice on business, marketing, technology, and more. Whether you are a newbie or a seasoned professional, this episode is for you. I am your host, Audrey Wiggins. Let's chop it up. Hey, Chop Squad, Audrey here. I hope you're doing great, and thank you for listening to The Business Chop. Please remember to subscribe, review, and share this podcast. I can't do it without you. I appreciate you. This episode is with Kerry-Ann Powell. She is a global business strategist, speaker, and champion of small and medium-sized businesses. Is that you? Kerry-Ann's varied experience of over 20 years as a Washington, D.C. attorney, lobbyist, and fundraiser positions her as an authority of what it takes to strategically succeed while confronting difficult obstacles. Now, after raising $120 million to build the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial in D.C., she launched her strategic business and consulting firm, Trafalgar Strategies. She and her team advises business owners from various industries and countries on creating the strategies, systems, and mindsets to thrive in business and in life. She is committed to spreading the gospel that running a small or medium-sized business is vital and important to our economies, yet it doesn't have to feel like we're trying to manage a chaotic tornado. I know some of you have been there. I know I have as a small business owner. And business owners can run their businesses smoothly and feel confident that they will thrive. And on the fun side, when she's not speaking or running her business and working with her clients, Kerry-Ann can be found traveling, practicing her Spanish, and enjoying a good meal with good people. Kerry-Ann Powell, welcome to the Business Shop.
Audrey, what a joy and a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited.
Great. I know I am too. So, let's get with it. Let's start chopping it up. And so you've got a lot of experience here, over 20 years, and some of the things that we alluded to in your bio. So tell us about, how did you even get involved in raising that money for the memorial?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to share. So I originally, went when my first job out of college was actually fundraising. I was, you never really know what you think you know when you're, at 20 coming out of college. So I went in, I was like, I am going to be a fundraising director. Mm-hmm. Well, I got my first job. This was the youngest development director for the United Way in my city. And I just learned from that, kind of how to ask for big money. Mm-hmm. Anyway, while doing that, I realized that I actually did want to work on the policy side and the legal side of things to address some of the major problems that we're facing in our country. Went to law school, went to Washington, became a lobbyist and a public interest attorney, and did that for a number of years. Well, then one of my good friends sent me a message like, do you know they're building a Martin Luther King Memorial here in Washington on the National Mall? And I said, well, I did not know that, but I need to know about it. She's like, well, guess what? They're looking for someone to come in and do some fundraising. I said,
wow.
Well, So I put my hat in the ring. I came on board to do corporate fundraising. Then a year later, the director left and they said, hey, Kerry-Ann, come on, please run this program. So that's how I got in. And it was, I was like, they're like, it's going to be like 3 years. Okay, I'll come back and start back with my law practice right after that. Well, 10 years later, we're building it. But it was such a pleasure and a joy. And, it's one of the things that really, I've always been very strategic in the way that I sort of, I learned strategy from the ground up, from a young buck, and how to become strategic in business and how to create strong projects based on how creating strategic planning. Mm-hmm. And so when I finished the memorial, many of my colleagues and people that knew me from that world were like, hey, Kerry-Ann, can you come in, help us create strategy so we can develop and, increase our revenues in this organization, that organization. And that's kind of how the business began. It was just sort of like, I'll come over and do this thing with you all and I'll help you do that. And I realized, wait a minute, there's business there for that. So I started my business and it's been, a long journey since after that, but it's all about really being strategic, but being a part of that project still, mm-hmm. even though I love my business and I love the clients I work with, still, when I look back at those days building the memorial, Nothing better.
I know that's where all that passion and energy that goes into it. And then when you're doing it for somebody else, it seems like you can do, you dive in more than if you were trying to build that memorial for yourself or whatever the project
Right.
is. It's you kind of like, you're embarrassed or it's like, well, if people are going to support me in doing this, we shouldn't think like that. That's that imposter syndrome. But
Yes,
when you're
yes.
doing something for somebody else, it's always brings so much satisfaction. I think that's part of the drive right there. So when
Yeah.
you talk about strategic planning,
Mm-hmm.
are you helping businesses with their business plan or, from the beginning or?
Well, it's main things. So most companies come to me because of four main reasons. Well, there could be many, but the four ones that I pop up most times is one, they cannot scale. They're having a very difficult time scaling their business and growing it. So they've been trying to do it for a bit and they're like, what's happening? Why can't I make this happen? Okay. They may also be concerned because they are having some sort of a cash flow issue, right? So either they may even be having profits, but their cash flow is really low. And so that might be a problem why they may pop up and say, hey, I need some assistance and some help. Now, the third reason is they may not be able to develop a strong team, whether they don't have a strong team or they've hired a team and somehow the team that they hired early days in the business is no longer working. And then fourth, if the owner, the founder is just wearing too many hats and they can't step away from the business without feeling like it's going to implode. Those are the four real things that most people come to me for. Now, I like to think of those things as four symptoms of chaos, but they're symptoms of chaos. Okay. Most of the times, once they come to me and say, hey, here's the problem, then we sort of do an assessment of the business and really kind of look and see. And there's really 8 main reasons why there's chaos happening in the business. And those are what we call the core symptoms, the core reasons of chaos, of the four culprits, as we call it. And so we come from the methodology that we use is, okay, depending upon what the main red light, flaring issue is that's popping up in their business, we'll address that particular issue and then move from there. So we kind of usually have about one or two big red light, scary things that are happening in the business that's causing the problems. And then there's some yellow lights, and then there's some, okay, well, we can kind of put that on the back burner, but we need to get back to it, but it's okay. So it might be a situation where, the company does need to sort of step back and do a full-on strategic plan and kind of say, okay, maybe early days when the business started, this is what we wanted to do, but we have no real direction right now. And so that's one of the reasons why we are not growing, is because nobody really knows what true north is. So we may come in and do a full-on strategic plan with the company and begin to bring the leaders in and sort of figure out what's best for the company now at this particular point. But sometimes it may really be an issue of, the team. You need to sort of do the lead, the owner, the leader, the founder, the CEO of the business isn't leading very well, and the team isn't then not showing up. So you have to kind of work with what kinds of ways in which we can help them, implement better leadership. And then sometimes it's really a systems problem. They just don't have any processes in place. And so everyone's all willy-nilly doing whatever they want to do. And there's no true moving towards the goal together. So it depends on what the problem is that they're facing. That will determine what we think is the actual problem, not the problem, the symptoms, but the actual core problem. Okay. And we'll help them fix that.
Okay. Can you give me some examples of, some of those trouble areas, these flags that you're talking about, these red areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I often, and it doesn't sound sexy at all, Audrey, but it's some of the foundational things, right? So for instance, you may, if it's a smaller business, the owners, how the owner operates within that business is more core than, say, if it's a larger business where you have more like a professional leadership team that's already been hired on, and you kind of have your first or second CEO that's not, the owner or not from the family of the company, right? So let's just say the owner or the founder is still working in the business. Sometimes they really don't even know what their life plan is, so that they don't know if their life plan actually jives with the business vision. So sometimes it doesn't sound sexy. No one was like, well, I want strategic, innovative, blah, blah, blah. Well, sometimes it's just like, okay, what do you want in your life? You, the owner, the founder, what is your life vision? And then let's now go back and look at the business vision and see if it fits in to your life plan. Because if it doesn't, it's very difficult to build a business, to start scaling when you're not even sure if this business works for you any longer. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is real key, because we get in and whatever widget or service that that brought us to this business to start with. And, just year after year, we just keep doing that, but we're not really thinking about, where is this going? What's the next plane, or, the next product or next service or the next level of you personally. Is that what you're talking about as well?
Yes.
Business, but as that leader, you're right. Where am I? Where do I fit in the future of this?
Exactly.
I'm leaving it. Go ahead, Kerry.
Well, sometimes, Audrey, it might be a situation where it's time. Like, one of the things that I really focus on for my clients is not only their life plan, but also what's the exit strategy. And sometimes it may be time to exit, or to start creating an exit strategy so for instance, one company came to us, and wonderful, it was a manufacturing company, old school, in the Midwest. And they had, the company was built, they had been around for about, 30, 40 years. And they had a team of about 50 folks. But I would say 3/4 of the folks that were working there were all related. This is a family business, like real family business. And there's like two families that were represented there. There was the owner and founder. He was still working in the business. And then he had brought on board, early days, another sort of a person who was sort of his right-hand person. And her family was, a part of the business too. So you have this business that's being run by the family. Now, the older generation is now wanting to retire, but there is no exit strategy. So now the whole thing now is, how do we start coming now at late days to start talking about, okay, what does the exit strategy look like for you guys? What do we need to be implementing? How are you going to be able to have the first generation be able to still have a retirement coming out of the business? And then how do you train up the second generation? And that's a big deal. So a large part of me working with business is like, okay, now that we have a life plan, you got a business vision, what is the exit strategy? Because if you say, Audrey, you have your business and you're saying, okay, I want to sell it, say in 15, 20 years with a multiple of blah, 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 then you're building a business quite differently than if you say you wanted to leave it to your family and you want to be able to take a retirement out of it. Right. It's a two different type of business, how you want to build it. So I think it's vital that an owner, a founder, once you sort of have that plan moving forward, to start talking about what is the exit strategy and how you're going to build it.
Wow. Yeah, that's important. Have you worked with solo owners in that same type of thing, as as far as maybe selling it or just dissolving
Absolutely.
it?
Absolutely. Because my thing, it's best to, look, if someone comes to me and they're like, hey, I'm starting a business, or I have a business, and it's, and the truth is, Audrey, people who come to me are people who want to build something that to last. Okay. It's not just like, oh, here's my side gig, or here's my side hustle, or here's my lifestyle business that's going to sort of fund my travels. Most people who are working with me want to build something that has some legacy. They want to sell it in the end, or they want to build something. So even if they're coming in there and saying, hey, it's just me and my assistant right now, I still expect them, or I still encourage them to build an exit strategy at that time, because that helps you understand how you're going to build it. It helps you develop an org chart. It helps you know what kinds of people we need to be bringing into the business, so that you can begin to sort of, transition at a certain time, how you want to train people up, what's your way of making these widgets, and, what's the secret sauce, and how do you quantify that in a way to be able to pass it on to the next generation. And it also depends too, when you start building a business vision, so you want to be able to have everyone, or even if it's just you want to have a vision for the company that extends past your nose, right? So you're thinking, okay, I'm going to be building this, say, over the next, say, 20, 30 years. And by that point, I want to be looking like this. I want to have, this number of things. And of course, things change. So you can't get so stuck on a vision that you don't recognize that things are changing over a period of time. But
Right.
the more you have a true north, the more likely you are to get to it.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then it seems also if you're working with us and you're creating the strategic plan, that we can recognize the different checkpoints. So that's not the right word I'm looking for.
Yes,
but
exactly. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, those milestones, you can know, bam, we've hit that, check that off, we're moving in the right direction. And so that helps when you're on track, and it helps when you're off track, and you can course correct. Or there's something around, one of the things that I recommend, one of the 8 components is really innovation and optimization. So when you have running a business, and you can definitely have a system, a process in place that makes sure that you're constantly innovating. That allows for you to be able to course correct, or say, wait a minute, this was one way that we were going to go. But now that we are paying attention to where the trends are, we're going to go this way. But you're not going that way just because you didn't course correct. You're going that way because you deliberately decided to go that way.
I like that. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe give us one other example?
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the clients, so I always like to brag on her because, I love her. I like her as a person very much, but also because the way that she was able to manage some rough parts. So she came in, small business, and they probably had about 10 folks on her staff. And they were in a regulated, she was in a regulated industry. So it was a electronic gaming company. And so she, was really wanting to get to some high. She wanted to definitely pass the 1 million mark for sure. And she definitely wanted to, expand into different locations. They're based in Europe, but they wanted to sort of have offices in Latin America and in the continent of Africa. So we sort of, when we started working together, we were on that path. But then the pandemic hit, and because her industry is one that's regulated, there were many things that she could not do during that time frame. And it was very, very difficult. And I remember distinctly, being on the phone with her or being on Zoom, and she was, just in tears. She's like, wow, my business is going to go under. I'm probably going to have to let my team go. And, it was just an awful, awful day. Right. And I'm like, okay, so let's appreciate the gravity of this situation. So we're not going to not recognize this is a problem. Right.
Right.
But
right.
Now that we've done that, let's think and see what the next step could be for you. And because we were able to spend some time really thinking about, okay, what are some other products that you could probably put out there? What are some ways you can get your team energized for them to be able to thinking about new ideas and innovate? And what are some ways in which you can keep morale up? And then what are some ways that you could, hit payroll? Because in the end of the day, it's really some basic things, right? And so we came up with some really great strategies to be able to generate some new ways in which the company was going to move forward. And the way that she handled that and the way that she led her team stepped up very much so. And so as a result, they were coming up with new ways, new products, new ways of being existing in their industry. So by the time I would say maybe, a year out of that time frame, she was able to, hit the 1 million. She was able to branch out into 2 countries in Latin America, 1 country in Africa, and still in Europe. And then also be able to be voted best company to work for in her industry.
Wow,
so
that's
awesome. It's like you're looking at, and this is a small business. This isn't like massive, thousands of people. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm a champion for small businesses, is because if you're building a business, if you're listening to this and you're building a business and it's just you, or it's you and you've got your EA, and then maybe you have your salesperson, or maybe it's just you and maybe 4 or 5 other people in the team, I want to encourage you to lift your head up, because what you are doing, at least in the United States, if you're a small, medium-sized business in the US, 2/3 of people that are employed by a small and medium-sized company. 2/3.
Yeah, that was going to lead to the next question of because you talk about, why small and medium-sized businesses are so important to our economy.
2/3 of people that are employed are working for a small and medium-sized company. 90% of the companies in the US are small and medium-sized. You start looking into Asia, Europe, Africa, you're looking at 99%. So this is not something to like fool around, okay? The GDPs of our nations all really depend on small businesses thriving and also for small businesses being able to innovate, because that is really where economic growth comes. So if you have a business and you're thinking, well, this is just my small business, it's not just your small business, it's your small business. And as a result, it requires us to step into it in a meaningful way, step up and say, okay, my leadership of my team is really important. My leadership of of the organization, which I am leader of, is important. And my leadership of myself is important, right? Because if you're not leading yourself, you can't lead a team. You're not leading your team, you can't lead your organization. So in the end, leadership is a really important part of owning the business, but being strategic and always paying attention to how can I make this business better? How can I systemize things so that I can decrease costs and increase revenue so you can scale? Those are important things to question yourself all the time. But if you're coming up with problems and you're constantly feeling like you can't scale, you can't grow, cash flow is a problem, your team isn't performing, you can't lead the business without feeling like it's going to implode, then those are really, really big symptoms of chaos. I mean, obviously, sometimes you have those moments in your business where you're going to feel that way. But if they're consistent, perpetual, it's a big problem, because those actually happen to be the top 4 reasons why businesses fail.
You tout yourself as a business champion, a small business champion, and why do you believe that?
Because I just sometimes feel as if when we start talking about, even when you start looking at whenever our countries are facing sort of recessionary years, for instance, there's always this conversation around how do you buck up large corporations so that they can kind of stay afloat so that we can continue to keep employment. But when you start looking at the fact that, most people do work for a small and medium-sized company, then we should be bucking those up, right? I mean, the reality. And then I think about, businesses fail. Most businesses don't succeed. But every big business that's out there right now was once a small business. So the question is, how can we create tools and processes and infrastructure that can support small companies, small and medium-sized companies, so they can begin to be able to move forward and build and hire and so forth. And that comes from anything to financing, right? You need money to make money. So you need to be able to get loans, or you need to be able to get investments, or you need to be able to have some way of having a cash infusion. And the numbers are so, terrible when you think about how small businesses are, how difficult to get financing for growth. So, that's one thing I'm a big champion on, is being able to find infrastructure and create systems out there that, that supports small businesses growing and being able to thrive. And, you sort of think about like small towns, not just small towns, any community that is supported by not only the taxes of small businesses, because most large companies, if they have a branch in a city, they usually got some sort of tax break, right? Get to be there so they can hire. And I'm not going to say that we shouldn't, if a large company is moving into someone's city and they're going to hire a bunch of people that can then support the economy, I'm not completely opposed to, finding some ways to incentivize them. Although, but we got to call it like it is, corporate welfare, right? Yes. So, but small businesses exist all the time in cities, and they are always going to pay taxes. So therefore, if you own a small business and you're in your city, you're paying taxes, you need to be demanding from your city council, from to be able to make sure, like, where are the services to support small businesses? So when I say I'm a champion, I mean that I really believe in the ability of small businesses to make change, the ability to hire, And when you hire one person in a small business, you're talking about hiring one person who's supporting a family, right?
Yes.
So it's not just you, just, I just hired this one person. No, you're supporting an entire family. And as a result, whatever that family spends money upon.
Yeah, and that should be
Right.
part of our mission or part of our vision is of that company. You're not just I want to sell 1,000 widgets in 5 years. It's like I want to be able to support a certain number of families, including your own.
Including your own, exactly.
Right,
What
exactly. We don't go to work just to pile money up in a bank. Your mattress is for a reason. Yeah.
Speak again, Audrey. Speak again. And like the thing is too, you think about it, like what is a business in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
The business is really an entity out there that is designed to convert your inputs into value. What's the value? Well, the value can be perceived value or hardcore value, but the value to the stakeholders. What are the stakeholders? Well, yes, it's the owner, it's the employees, it's the customer, it's the vendors, right? It is the investors. So there's a lot of entities or people, stakeholders that get value from a company's existence.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really important. I talk to some clients, they come and they're like, oh, well, the business is my baby. I'm like, it's not your baby.
Or raise it up, okay, and let it go.
And let it go. But, it needs to be something that is outside of yourself. So you can be able to look at it and say, okay, how can I build this thing up in a way that, yeah, you're the caretaker of the baby, but you're not of the end. But it's not your baby, because when you try to look at it as your baby, that the movie, The Lord of the Rings, when had the ring, precious. You see, a business be like, precious, my business, and you're like, okay, can you step aside and take a look and recognize that there are some things that need to be done there, that if you keep thinking about it as your baby, you're not willing to make some of the hard choices.
Yes.
And you start build it in a way that it could generate the value that you're trying to get it to do.
That's right. Let that eagle fly.
Yes, let it fly.
Right. Well, you have a website you want to send us to, and tell us about that, Kerry-Ann.
Yeah, absolutely. So if for some reason you're feeling like, the conversation that Audrey and I is stepping on your toes a bit, and you feel like you have some chaos in the business and you just don't really know how to fix it, right? So I basically did a brain dump in a book that's basically titled The 8 True Culprits That Are Causing Chaos in Your Business. Okay. And you can download that free at www.nobusinesschaos.com. nobusinesschaos.com. And, you could just, flip through that and see. It's an easy read, but it gives you some real, the 8 reasons that I have found based on my experience working with small and medium-sized businesses, that why there is chaos happening. And oftentimes you'd be shocked as to what the reason really is, but it gives you some reasons and it gives you some strategies on how to fix it. So
great. Well, Kerry-Ann, this has been awesome. It's amazing. So Business Chop Squad, you've got your marching orders. Once you go over to nobusinesschaos.com, download that PDF and go through the information that Kerry-Ann has there for us. I'm going to go through it as well. And then, reach out to her and see how she can support your business further. Now, Kerry-Ann, I always want to give the last word to my guests. If you have that little pop of wisdom that you want to drop on us.
Well, Audrey, first of all, it's been such a joy to have a conversation with you.
Thank you.
I'm looking at that Cleveland sign. I'm like, I need to get to Cleveland.
Come on over.
There you go. But, I think the real thing that I'd like to leave with people is that, the importance of your business is really, the role that you play as an owner, the founder of a small and medium-sized company is really important. And if you're feeling like, it's sort of chaotic for you, it doesn't have to be that way. You can run your business smoothly. You can feel confident in running it, and you can thrive. So if you're feeling like burnt out, like you're getting ready to pull your hair out, maybe you're thinking about selling it, maybe you're thinking about walking away, pause for a bit, think about why you started in the first place. What do you want for your life, and what do you want your business to be like? If you need to switch and fix some things, do that. But, recognize the importance and the role it plays, and just step up and continue to do it. Hold your head up.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Chop Squad, hold your head up.
Thank you for listening to The Business Chop. We hope that you were able to glean valuable information from our guest and that you will download and share this podcast. Your rating and review is much appreciated. To go deeper with our guests, please visit their website and social channels. To learn more about us, please visit businesschop.info or altogether.biz, where we will help you expand your brand.